far-reaching power who likes to interject ourselves all over the world and in a lot of things that we shouldn't interject ourselves in. How do we, and I don't want to use the term nationalism as in the sense of the Trump type of nationalism, but how do we bring back that nationalism of where we're building the United States up and looking at our crumbling infrastructure? Like education, for example, cost the Iraq War $2.4 trillion. That's 24 million $100,000 college educations. That's money back into us. So how do we get the money back into us and out of these powerful hands? And where does it begin? How does it look like? Because it's been 60 years of this building.
It begins with having a president and commander-in-chief who actually understands these issues and who has the foresight to see what the consequences of these decisions are. You know, so often these wars are waged to go and be the world's police, to overthrow authoritarian dictators under the guise of humanitarianism. You know, we've got to go in and we've got to help people who are suffering in these countries without actually looking at a couple of important questions that should be asked and answered before making this decision. A, will our operation actually help the people that we are supposedly going in and trying to help? Or will it make things worse? We look at Iraq and Libya and Syria, we see how things have gotten worse. And there are many other examples throughout history, all the way back to Iran and the CIA's overthrow of Mossadegh there. We're still seeing the implications of that now. You can go to Central and South America to see similar examples. So are we actually going to be able to help the people that we're saying we're going in to try to help? What will the cost and consequence be? What is our achievable objective? Something that's critical in the planning of any military operation, frankly, something that is essential in the planning of how you solve any problem. What is the problem that we are seeking to solve, and what is our clear achievable goal and objective? And even now, even in Congress, as we're sitting across the table from 4-star generals or senior ranking people in the Department of Defense, you ask them, what is it that we are trying to achieve in Afghanistan? At what point is that achieved so that our troops can then come home? And you don't really get a clear answer.
Has Congress lost their basically power, constitutional power, since 9/11, do you think? Because it seems like the checks and balances aren't there, and we have a free will type of executive branch that can interject at
I
their
would
own,
say that
own
Congress,
whim. And what role do you see of bringing that legislative power back? Because you're representative, you're right there with your people, you represent who you represent, you know, and that gets lost real quick, you know, in a co-equal branch of government.
Congress has let that power go. It didn't just happen, you know, without cause. Congress has abdicated its constitutional role and responsibility in being the body that declares war in so many of these wars that we've seen waged. And there has been abuse from the executive branch, overstepping its boundaries. We're seeing this now, even as the Trump administration pushes us closer and closer to a war with Iran, even as we saw the attack on the oil fields in Saudi Arabia. Many of the questions we were asking them is, under what authority, under what constitutional authority do you go and deploy U.S. troops to respond to an attack not on our country, not on our people, not on our infrastructure, not on our military, but to another country that we have no security treaty alliance with? And the response that we get back is the same general broad excuse that we hear over and over and over again. Well, the president has Article 1 authority, meaning if the president believes that there is a national security concern, then he or she can act unilaterally to deploy our military. But an attack on a foreign country's oil fields at a time when we are exporting more oil than we are importing in this country. You can't make the argument we've got to do this because otherwise we're going to see a huge oil crisis in our country. That excuse is long gone. You end up with a president that says, well, we have Article 1 authority. We have Article 1 authority, which means any situation in the world, this power is being abused by a president who says, we have Article 1 authority. What about Article 2? Article 2 says that Congress is the body through the War Powers Resolution that has that responsibility to declare war, which means that the administration needs to go to Congress and get that authority. So the responsibility lies on both sides. I've introduced legislation called the No More Presidential Wars Act that speaks to the heart of this problem, to hold both Congress and the executive, I don't care what political parties are in charge, accountable to fulfill that constitutional responsibility. Somebody asked me, they brought up a similar concern a few months ago, and I shared this legislation that I introduced, and they said, okay, yeah, that's fine, that's great, you're a member of Congress. What are you going to do when you're actually president? When you're on the other side of that table? I said, I would sign the bill into law. That's what I would do. Our Constitution matters. Thank you. There's a reason why our founders set up this system of governance. You know, back to Civics 101, that we have 3 co-equal branches of government. And the whole co-equal thing gets lost, unfortunately, too often, right? And you see abuses on different sides, but I think this is why at every one of our events we pass out free copies of the Constitution and Bill of Rights, because I think it's important that we as voters remember, where we are rooted as a country, and then hold leaders accountable to ensure that we are upholding all of our rights within our Constitution.
Last question.